This is a practice which I have titled the Five Great Certainties. These are listening to the heart practices, and this is a special occasion also because we have recently just completed the listening to the heart meditation Sangha. And that Sangha had a full cycle of 2 years, meeting twice a month for 2 years, and many of the Sangha members are here, I see. And so I wanted to start by saying thank you to all of you who went deeply into these practices. So we have a bit of a celebration here in our meditation practice. And I will be mentioning more about this Sangha towards the end. And we do have a Q&A. Again, for those of you who are just joining us, we will have a Q&A at the end. Put your questions in the chat. And we are also going to be giving you a special invitation at the end, as we always do. Now, let's begin our practice. And for those of you who are not familiar with the listening to the heart practices, we simply make ourselves comfortable in a meditation posture. And this can be sitting, it can be reclining, it can be whatever position you like. But basically, we try to find a balance between yin and yang, meaning that we would like to have the body relaxed and yet alert. And then we would like to find our heartbeat. And if you are not familiar, we have a couple of mudras or hand positions that we can start with that we will be using throughout this 90 minutes. This is the classical method from Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine of listening to the pulse. So you can begin with this if you would like. You can just put 3 fingers over the radial artery of the opposite wrist and feel the pulsation there. Another position that you can use is to put your thumb on the wrist like this. And the advantage of this is that you can put your hands down and relax in your lap with the palm up. So you can put the palm up and then you can just touch the thumb to the radial artery at the wrist. Another method, if you are familiar with this, it's a little more subtle, but you can also touch the fingertips to the base of the thumb, and you will find a very small artery that's pulsating there. And some people can also touch their fingertips to the palm and feel a very small pulsation there. So this is the starting point, is that we turn our attention to the pulse. Take a minute, relax, close eyes, feel the pulse. Notice that your heart is beating. As we go through these 5 major practices, I will give you some commentary and observations about why they give us certainty and how that certainty can help us to reduce our anxiety. So feel the pulsation of the heart. And in this first practice, we're going to start at the microscopic level. And we're going to proceed step by step in 5 practices to the macroscopic level, because our heart is beating at a microscopic level within our individual body, but that heartbeat is an expression of the entire prana of the universe. And that's the macroscopic level. And knowing all of these layers in between gives us a deep perspective on everything. So bring the attention to the pulsation at the wrist. Close eyes, relax. Relax the face. Relax the shoulders, relax the tongue, and now bring the attention only to the pulsation at the wrist. We are going to start with the microscopic practice of listening to the heart. Notice that the pulse wave is coming and going. Breathe slowly, relax the whole body. Notice that the heart is beating. This is a great certainty. We can be completely certain that the heart is beating. Now begin to focus into the pulse wave. Every pulse wave arises and subsides. Notice that. First, we notice two phases: arising, subsiding. Now, this is passing under the fingertips fairly quickly. But as we focus, time slows down, our breathing slows down, the heartbeat slows down, the mind slows down. And with practice, we can slow this down deliberately. Now, focus is very much about leaving other things outside the scope of our awareness. Our mind has a unique ability to focus on a tiny point or to be open to the entire universe. For now, let's focus it on a tiny point, the wave under the fingertips. Notice it is arising and subsiding, arising and subsiding. Now see if you can make that focus even more detailed and notice 4 phases of each pulse wave. The first is that the pulse arises. Notice over and over, it arises. Then notice the second phase. It has a peak. It peaks over and over. And now notice the third phase of the pulse wave is that it subsides. The pulse wave subsides over and over. And now notice the fourth phase of each pulse wave, and that is there is a pause at the end of each. Notice that your mind is becoming more focused and clear. The body is becoming more relaxed. Breathing is slowing, heartbeat is slowing a little bit. And we are able to pay closer attention to the phases of each pulse wave. And now we notice each phase carefully with each pulse. The pulse arises. There's a peak. The pulse subsides. There is a pause. It arises. There's a peak. It subsides. There is a pause. Notice carefully the 4 phases of each pulse wave. Notice how bringing our attention to the pulse stabilizes the mind. Leave everything else out of the attention. The only thing that should be in our awareness is the arising, the peak, the subsiding, and the pause of the pulse wave. Now, in this process of one pulse wave is contained the entire cycle of life and death, birth and growth and decline and ending. And the reason that we can know this with certainty is very simple. Because at that last phase of the pulse wave, in the pause, if the heart does not beat again, then this incarnation is finished. And when the pulse comes again, life has started. And so the reality of our life biologically is that we live one heartbeat to the next. And we are one heartbeat away from the next world. Now, this, of course, is a fundamental contemplation taught by all of the spiritual lineages to contemplate impermanence, the fragility of life. And so we begin by cultivating the certainty through repeated practice, repeated awareness that every heartbeat is the beginning of life, and every pause in the pulse wave is the end. And life started with a heartbeat, pulsation, and it ends with the pause. And so this is a deep, direct, honest observation of the nature of reality. We gain great certainty when we understand reality. And so observe these four phases carefully. Observe the rising of the pulse wave, observe the peak, observe the subsiding, and observe the pause. And now notice how moment by moment life renews itself. And it is not morbid to contemplate this, it is joyful because we are aware that life happens again and again and again, moment by moment, life is beginning. And that it is precious, that it does that, and that we are paying attention to that. And so notice how over and over again the heart pulsates life again. And this is the basis of so many spiritual practices and teachings from everywhere, noticing that life continues only one heartbeat at a time. Knowing this gives us great certainty that this is the nature of life. And knowing the nature of life gives us great courage and clarity. Okay, so now take a deep breath and stretch. All right, so thank you for doing our first practice together. Welcome to all of you who joined us during that first practice. And this is a fundamental practice of observing the nature of reality and the nature of our biological reality and the nature of the preciousness of life. And there are many, many practices that are taught in different traditions, but they all have a common thread, and that is that without knowing, without being aware, without confronting the fragility of life, that the mind is easily distracted with things that may not take us anywhere in terms of our spiritual practice. And so these teachings of impermanence and the fragility of life and the great good fortune to have a body that functions well and a mind that functions well and the time and the resources to be able to meditate, to evolve spiritually, grow spiritually, develop spiritual insight and maturation. These are great blessings. And therefore, we are using our life in a very meaningful way to observe the nature of reality. And this is a fundamental starting point for spiritual practice, is to simply observe that life is precious. And yet we have this blessing to meditate. And so thank you for giving this your attention here at the beginning. Now, what we are going to do is proceed to the next part of this. We're gradually moving our attention from the micro to the macro to discover all of these things about the nature of the heart and life. And with each one, we develop certainty. Now, the great certainty that will come if you keep listening to the 4 phases of the pulse wave is you will become completely certain that life starts with every heartbeat, and you will be totally certain that it ends with every heartbeat. And therefore, you will become completely certain that you are living in the moment. And if you are living in the moment, completely aware of this process, there tends to be much less room for the mind to fabricate anxiety. And so this is one of the fundamental aspects of meditation that is taught, is that there are stages of accomplishment. And in the stages as we progress, the outer world bothers us less. We become much more grounded in the reality and the ongoing flow of our deeper practice. So this awareness of the true nature of life arising, dissolving with every heartbeat can gradually begin to infuse our awareness and can lead us over and over to the habit of just coming back to the heartbeat no matter where we are. And especially if we are feeling anxiety, we can pause and we can listen to the heartbeat, and that will train our brain to be close to the heart. And that will help us to have much less fear. It doesn't mean we won't have fear, but we want a spiritual response to fear. We want to be able to metabolize fear quickly with a spiritual view and a strong mind and strong focus. All right, let's go to the next practice. And now what we're going to do is expand our focus a bit. We're going to continue where we left off. So close eyes again. Bring your attention back to the pulse wave. And again, notice the pulses are rising and dissolving. And yet we are still here, but time has passed since we began listening. 15 minutes ago, we first started feeling the pulse wave. Where did that time go? Every pulse wave subsides into the past. Every pulse wave arises as the future comes into the present. And therefore, what we are listening to as we feel the pulse waves passing under the fingertips is we are feeling a river of time. And the river of time is coming from the future into the present and passing into the past. And that river of time is flowing in our bloodstream. And that river of time has a beginning and an end. That river of time began with the first heartbeat, and that river of time will end with the last. And then we will be free of time. And between the first heartbeat and the last is a lifespan. And the lifespan is a river of heartbeats that are waves that flow through time, a very brief time. They appear and they flow and they disappear. They appear from the emptiness before birth. They disappear into the emptiness after life. And most likely that emptiness after life is the same emptiness before life. And so now with that understanding, we listen to the heartbeat and we notice that every pulse wave is dissolving into the past. Receding like the wake of a boat. And we can see that the pulse waves from 5 minutes ago are receding into the pulse waves from 20 minutes ago when we started. And those pulse waves are receding into the pulse waves from when we were sleeping last night. And those pulse waves are receding into yesterday and the day before and the week before and the month before and the year before and the decade before. And we can feel a continuity from the pulse wave right now all the way back to childhood. It is the same river. We are feeling the same river. And that river goes all the way through infancy and all the way through the time of our birth, all the way into gestation and the womb, all the way to the first heartbeat. And we can feel that this river started then. And so feel the pulse wave now as the culmination of this entire river up till now. And now notice that every pulsation is new, and it is coming from the future. And the future is flowing into the present and becomes manifest with every heartbeat. Every heartbeat is the future becoming present. Feel that. And therefore, just as it is difficult to see and feel and remember the beginning, it's also difficult to feel and see the end. But there is a future because we are still here in the present. And there is a past that we know, that we have lived. And so now we look at the pulse wave from this perspective, that we are touching this river at this point in time. And yet this river had a beginning and it has an end that are not clear, but they are certain. And if we contemplate our lifespan in this way, many profound insights come, and many profound intuitions come about who we are and the way our life has unfolded. And sometimes we will have insights into the nature of reality that help us to become very certain about existence and life and death in such a way that we lose our fear of both death and life. One of the images that frequently has come to me doing this practice is something I have seen in nature. In the canyons in the California coastal mountains, when you are hiking up, you will frequently be walking in a dry stream bed, and then you will come to a stream, and it disappears into the ground. And if you follow the stream, you will come to a place where it comes out of the ground, and then the stream bed is dry again. And this is exactly what our lifespan is. Our lifespan comes out of the earth. Literally, the earth created us. Our lifespan started with the first heartbeat, and that is where we came out of the earth. And we flow along and we return to the earth. And that is the stream of our life. Take a moment, contemplate that. See if you can feel each pulse wave receding into the past, all the way back to the first heartbeat. See if you can feel each heartbeat as the flow of the future becoming manifest in the present. Feel the entire river of your lifespan from first to last heartbeat. And if you keep coming back to this, you will become very certain that this is true. And if you become very certain that it is true, then you will have less fear about it. And if you follow it all the way back to the first heartbeat, you will notice that it came out of our parents, and that is a metaphor for coming out of the earth. But you will also find that there is the emptiness of formlessness before consciousness became embodied. And likewise, if you contemplate where the pulses are coming from, you will gain certainty that they end, and you will probably begin to feel how the pulse wave returns to the earth, which is how our body returns, and consciousness returns to space. And if you can feel, if you can cultivate this feeling, this awareness of the lifespan from the first to the last heartbeat and the emerging of the life from pure consciousness and returning to pure consciousness, emerging from the earth, returning to the earth, and you can see this with great certainty as a reality, a biological reality, a spiritual reality, then the fear of this process will subside. And we will begin to feel at peace about being part of nature. So take one more moment to feel the heartbeat going all the way back to the first, going all the way into the future to the last. Feel the entire river of the lifespan. And recognize this is a moment in time and space. And if you contemplate this deeply, you may begin to catch a glimpse that this moment in time and space is also part of a greater continuity of other moments in other times and spaces. That's how deep the prana of the heartbeat is. Okay, take a deep breath. Stretch. Again, thank you for your time and your attention to this deep level of the heart prana, the life force, the chi of the heart. Many teachings point to this phenomena. There's one teaching that I have articulated in the Listening to the Heart program for those students who have been in that and the Sangha members who studied this, that I like very much. It comes from Taoism that describes perfectly what we just did. And it says that there is a cycle of transformations. And the transformations start with emptiness. And emptiness transforms into Shen, spirit. Spirit transforms into Qi, energy. Energy transforms into blood. Blood transforms into birth. Birth transforms into growth. Growth transforms into aging. Aging transforms into death. Death transforms into emptiness. And so when I point to that space before the first heartbeat and after the last, that's the space, the transitional bardo, the transformation of emptiness. But emptiness then keeps transforming into spirit, which has many dimensions to translate and many levels of meaning. Shen, spirit, vapor. But this begins to move and transform into chi, vitality, energy. And energy then is moving into form as blood. And blood is the nutrient blood of the uterus and fertility and conception. And that is birth. And once again, we are in time and space, and growth leads to development and the fullness of life, and then aging, and then death. And this is a cycle of transformations according to Taoism. And the practices are designed to take us back to understand what is Shen, what is emptiness. Because it is said that until we understand and leave this cycle, it is unconscious and involuntary. This was stated specifically in these teachings, that we do not want to be born and yet we do not want to leave. And so the transformations are occurring regardless of our opinions about them. All right, let's continue now. Let's relax again, feel the pulse, and now we will look at a more cosmological view. Again, feel the heartbeat. Relax the eyes. Relax the shoulders. And now we are going to study another aspect of the heartbeat and our own consciousness. And this is a fundamental practice that is taught in many different ways. And the teaching is that reality is self-arisen. Now, this does not mean we create our own reality in kind of a New Age interpretation. It's much deeper than that. It's that only one person is experiencing the reality that you are experiencing, and that is you. And that is happening because of the interface between mind and matter that started with the first heartbeat. And reality is not what it seems to be. One of the things that my teacher, the Dharma Master Shindao, said one afternoon as we were sitting on a stone bench outside of his meditation cave drinking tea, he said, "The wise understand that reality is not what it seems." Now, the way we can study this in our own heartbeat is linked to Chinese medicine, and specifically to a very Taoist aspect of Chinese medicine. And so this is the practice that we can call the five flowers. And this is a practice that is body-based. It's becoming aware of how the body works, and specifically the relationship between the heart and the sense organs. Now, I will just introduce two of the sense organs because this is a longer contemplation if we do all five, but I'll introduce two, our eyes and our ears. And the term, the five flowers, is a very beautiful poetic term that describes the five sense organs. In Chinese medicine, Taoist medicine, the five sense organs are called five flowers. And the reason for that is because they open and close. Now, they open and close according to a biorhythm. And the biorhythm is that we wake up in the morning and our sense organs open. We go to sleep at night and the flowers of the senses close. Now, of course, the only sense organ that actually closes is the eyes, but it refers to how consciousness arises to the sense organs and then withdraws from the sense organs on a biorhythmic basis. And this is one of the first clues to what the Dharma Master was saying, that reality is not what it appears. And that is that reality is always coming and going. The outer world is only in our consciousness when we're awake, and then it's not. And then when we are in dreams, we are in a different world. And then when we are in dreamless sleep, no worlds are seen or heard. And so the world is actually created by the biorhythm of our consciousness coming and going. And this is what we can contemplate with this practice. But the place where we link the heart is by the statement in Chinese medicine that the heart is the root and the arteries are the stems and the organs are the flowers. And what that means is that our sense organs are functioning because the heart is pumping blood to them so they can function. And this is a fact. This is medicine. This is science. That with each heartbeat, it gives blood to the eyes so that the eyes can see. It gives blood to the ears so that the ears can hear. With every heartbeat, the sense organs function. And as we have studied already, if the heart does not contract and beat, then the organs will not receive blood. And when the heart stops, we can assume that those 5 flowers of the sense organs are going to close on this world and that we will no longer perceive it. And so the realization, the certainty that comes from doing this practice is that from an internal level, the interface between our consciousness and matter that is arising and dissolving on a biorhythmic basis is the source of creating our experience of the outer world. Now, that has a lot of very profound implications in helping us to be comfortable in the world. All right, let's practice. Bring your fingertips again to the pulsation at the wrist. Feel the pulsation. And now follow the pulsation from the artery at the wrist and feel the heart in the chest. Mostly we don't feel it, and so we imagine it, and we feel that the contraction of the heartbeat is manifest in the pulse at the wrist. And now bring the attention to the eyes. Even with your eyes closed, you will see light. You will see through the eyelids, you will see the orange color of the sunlight. Notice this field of vision. And notice that this field of vision is constantly changing every nano instant. That field of vision is the meeting place between radiant energy of the sun and the rods and cones, the receptor sites of the eyes, and the optic nerve and the visual cortex. And the blood flow from the heart to the eyes. So feel the eyes, put your attention in the eyes, relax the eyes, and notice that that field of vision behind the eyelids that is always changing is the meeting point of radiant energy from the sun and the pulsation of the heart pumping blood to the eyes. And because the heart is pumping, the eyes can see. And the eyes can see because we are in the bardo of the waking state, and the prana of our attention is focused through the eyes. All of these things have to come together for the outer world to arise in our vision. The light has to come to our eyes, but the eyes have to have nutrients from the heart, and our consciousness has to be there. And so notice now that the field of vision is constantly changing, and that constantly changing field of vision is the flowing pulsations of the heartbeat. In other words, the heart is pumping the outer visual field into existence, one heartbeat at a time. See if you can perceive this clearly. It is scientifically correct. It is medically correct. It is spiritually correct, biologically correct. This is how the outer world arises. It is a subjective experience. There is no denying this. It is a great certainty that the only person who is seeing the field of vision is you. It is also a great certainty that you are only seeing it because the heart is pumping it into existence. And it is also totally certain that when you fall asleep, your consciousness will withdraw from this. And when you enter into the bardo of dreams, the same neurological networks will be active in the dream state. But it will only be you perceiving those dreams again. And that will happen because your heart is pulsating in your sleep. And then when you go into dreamless sleep, the heart will still be pulsating, waiting for you to come back into dreams, and then waiting for you to come back into the bardo of waking, and then the outer flower will open again and perceive the outer world visually. And if we practice this repeatedly, we will develop certainty that the outer world keeps coming and going in our own consciousness. Now, for a moment, turn your attention to the ears. Listen to the stream of sound. Feel the heartbeat at the wrist. Feel the pulsation in the chest. And now notice that the stream of sound that is arising in your consciousness is because the heart is pumping it into existence. And this is how we can practice with all five sense organs, We feel the pulse at the wrist. We feel the heartbeat in the chest. We place the attention in the eyes. We place the attention in the ears. We place the attention in the nose, the mouth, the skin. And we observe all the sensations arising in the sense organs. And we notice that they are all arising one heartbeat at a time. And therefore, our experience of the outer world is being pumped into existence one heartbeat at a time. And this will give us great certainty that the outer world is actually a reflection. And the deeper level of this teaching is the biorhythm. And the biorhythm is that the prana of our consciousness withdraws every night. And it arises again in dreams. And then it withdraws from dreams into dreamless sleep. And this is a natural process. And this is the same process as life and death. This is the same process of the cycle of transformation that I described, but it's happening on a biorhythmic basis in a 24-hour cycle instead. And so the great certainty develops that our consciousness withdraws from the sense organs with the final heartbeat and it returns to its source. But that is nothing new because it has been returning to the source every day over and over again. And with that great certainty, then we lose fear of death and life. And we understand that we are part of nature, and we understand that we are part of creation, and we understand that this is creation. And that because it is creation and we are part of it, that it is good and everything is okay. Okay, take a deep breath and stretch. And again, thank you for exploring that very deep level of consciousness and the heart prana. And now we will expand the lens a little bit further. And I will introduce another extensive practice, but only briefly. And that is to meditate on the 5 elements of the biosphere as they circulate through the body. And this is a biological fact. It is a scientific fact. It is a medical fact. It is a spiritual fact that the body is made of the elements of the earth. And those elements are described in Ayurvedic medicine as earth element, water element, fire element, air element, moving through channels of space. And at that level, if we look deeply into the nature of the body, we find there is no one there. It is a matrix of elements that is moving, and yet it is animated by a profound intelligence from the biosphere. And that profound intelligence of the biosphere is part of what causes the heart to pulsate. And that profound intelligence of the biosphere is an evolutionary expression of the cosmological intelligence. So this gives us great certainty, again, that we are inseparable from nature. And it can also help us dissolve the artificial perceptions that there is an inner and outer. And this can help us feel very close, not just to nature, but to the elements of nature as the expression of whatever we would like to call a greater power. And so we can actually feel the presence of God inside of us as the 5 elements of creation. We can feel the Creator inside of us, creating us. We can feel Kali, the goddess that is giving birth to everything, dancing inside of us. We can feel cosmological intelligence. We can feel Mahat, the mind of the universe, in these elements, whatever we want to call it. We can feel close to that. And if we feel close to an ultimate source, if we feel close to God, if we feel close to the Creator, if we feel close to nature as the expression of God, an ultimate intelligence, an ultimate source, an ultimate creator, if we feel that, genuinely feel it, it will destroy all fear. And so let's practice again, very briefly. Relax, put the attention back on the heartbeat. Feel the pulsation at the wrist. Now, feel the pulse wave at the wrist. And feel how this is liquid. It's water. Feel how the body is a container of water that is circulating. Feel how that water is moving through the heart with each heartbeat. Feel how that water came into the body the last time you drank liquid and is moving around and will go back out. Feel how that water is moistening everything. The saliva in the mouth, the fluid in the eyes, the moisture on the skin, the vapor in the breath, the fluids in the joints, the juices in the digestive tract, the blood in the circulatory system. The body is made of water. Feel that. Feel how it's moving through the heart. Feel it in the pulse wave. And feel how that water is the same water as the rain and the streams and the springs. And if we contemplate that, we can dissolve the sense of boundary of inner and outer. Because from the standpoint of the water, there is no boundary. It is flowing in everything. And it is in us now, but then it will be in the plants next. And then it will be in the animals. And then it will be in the soil. And then it will be in the rain, in the springs, and then it will be in us again. It's a continual flow. It has been everywhere. It is in everything. And it gives life. And we cannot live without it for more than a few days. And feel that in the heartbeat. Feel all those things. Feel the universal water element around us. Feel it coming into us. Feel all the sensations it creates. Feel it passing through the center of the heart. Feel it in the pulse wave. And give thanks that we have it when so many do not. And this can help us to feel very close to the Creator, manifest as the biosphere of this earth that is creating and sustaining all life. So feel the water element as a sacred element that is giving us life. Feel our inseparability from it in nature. Feel it as a life-giving element. Feel that life-giving element as the presence of the creator of life. Feel it moving through the heart. And if we practice this, we can gain great certainty that we are nature. We are that which is creating us. We are its expression. And we are inseparable, completely inseparable from creation at a biological level. And yet fear arises because we feel separate and alone. But as Rumi said, it is closer to you than you are to yourself. And therefore, if we keep coming back over and over again to this inseparability with creation, it will help reduce fear. Okay, take a deep breath and stretch. And our final practice before we move into our discussion, anything you would like to put in the chat, we can discuss in just a minute. But you can see that we have gone from a very microscopic focus on just the pulse wave to a more extensive view of a lifespan, to a more extensive view of how the heart is creating reality in our subjective awareness, one heartbeat at a time, to a biological inseparability with the elements around us. And so finally, our last practice is to take this to the ultimate level, which is to recognize that the heart is beating as a result of all of this that is beyond even the biosphere of this earth, that the heartbeat is actually the pulsation of cosmological intelligence. And it is a pulsation that is inside everything. It is in the opening and the closing of the flowers, and it's in the seasonal rhythms of nature, and it is in the process of incarnation, disincarnation, waking and sleeping. Everything is pulsating. Everything is arising and dissolving. Everything is part of this process. And all of these layers are happening at a microscopic level inside our own body. But if we contemplate how all of those things are happening cosmologically all around us all the time, and that we are part of it and that it created us, then we become closer and closer to that source, to that consciousness, to that intelligence, to that spirit, to that ultimate absolute, whatever we want to call it, so many different names. And that is the ultimate certainty that destroys all fear of everything, destroys fear of death, destroys fear of life, destroys all fears, to be completely grounded in that knowing. But that's the practice, because it's easy to say, it's difficult to do it. So in our last few moments of precious opportunity together, let's do that. Find the pulsation. And I will give you a brief overview of another one of the practices that you are familiar with if you have studied this. Feel the pulsation at the wrist. Now feel how that pulse wave happens every time the heart contracts. And so bring the attention back to the chest. Feel the link. And now be aware that every time the heart contracts, it's because there was a spark of bioelectrical current that passed across the heart muscle that caused the muscle to contract. That's a spark of current that is scientific, but it is also deeply mystical because that is called different things in different lineages. It is said that that spark comes from God in the Sufi tradition. It is said that that spark ultimately comes from Mahat, the mind of the universe in the Vedas. So feel the pulsation at the wrist. Feel the heart beating in the chest. Feel a spark of bioelectrical current. Imagine a spark of prana pulsating, arising, dissolving, causing the heart to contract. And then become aware that that's neurological prana that comes from the brain. And then be aware that in the mystical traditions, it is said that at the crown of the head, there is a aperture, a mystical opening where very subtle prana of the universe is connected to our individual nervous system. And this is a metaphor. We don't have to believe it. All we have to become aware of is that something created our heart that was profound intelligence, genetically, biologically. Something is causing it to pulsate that is profoundly intelligent from the earth and the biosphere. And that intelligence of the biosphere evolved from the solar system, and that evolved from the galaxies, and that evolved from the universe. And therefore, no matter how we describe it, our heart would not be beating if it was not connected to all of creation. It is the end result. Every heartbeat is the end result of the intelligence of the universe operating through the intelligence of the earth in the intelligence of the body. Feel that. If we return to this over and over again, what we are doing is we are meditating directly on God, meditating directly on cosmological intelligence, if we want to call it that, meditating directly on Mahat, the mind of the universe, meditating directly on the Creator in every heartbeat, meditating directly on the source of life in every heartbeat, meditating directly on any name you give it that is the ultimate source of our existence. We did not create the earth created us. We did not create the universe created us. And that creative process is one heartbeat at a time. And if we bring our attention to it, we are paying attention to creation. And if we are paying attention to creation unfolding, we gain great certainty that we are part of it. And that destroys fear of death and life, a step at a time, gradually. Okay. Take a deep breath and stretch. And thank you again. So you can now see the whole sequence. We started from the microscopic level, and that practice was a bit longer. And gradually expanded it into the cosmological dimensions, and with each practice, it became shorter and shorter. But I'm also giving you an overview of these practices, and one practice can be an entire practice that will go very deeply, and they're all closely interrelated also. So now we're going to move into our Q&A, but before we do that, I want to mention again the Sangha and say thank you to all of you who are in the Sangha, meeting twice a month for 2 hours, 1 hour of practice, 1 hour for discussion, and doing that for 2 years. And according to my calculations, the Sangha members collectively listened to over 27 billion heartbeats together. And so thank you to all of you for doing that. All right, now let's look at the chat here. And there are some very important comments that have come in. Many thank yous and mahalos and appreciations and gratitude and blessings and so forth. Many, many comments like that. Thank you to everybody. There are a few topics that have been raised here, however, that I would like to touch on here. How do you see this relating to cancer? I am dealing with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. And what I would say is that spiritual practice is very important. And any kind of spiritual practice is important. The kind of spiritual practice that gives you the most benefits is the most important. Now, meditation is not always easy, although many people have reported that listening to the heart is easier than some types of meditation, more quickly relaxing and so forth. But I would say that there are a number of benefits of meditation that are directly related to cancer, and especially the listening to the heart methods that are directly related. So first of all, we have a very practical benefit of meditation, which is stress reduction. And anxiety is part of the cancer journey for everyone. And stress reduction can help us to make that journey more calmly. It doesn't mean that we won't have anxiety, because many times the anxiety is coming from the body. And that's very difficult for many people to understand and to actually manage, because the gut is so sensitive. The gut-brain axis is so sensitive that any inflammation in the gut will create anxiety states. So one of the conversations that I have with people frequently in my consultations, and this would be a good topic to discuss in a consultation in more detail, one of the topics that I have is to remind people that many times there's nothing wrong with you. People frequently feel that they have to do all this work on their mind and do all this work on their emotions and do all this work on their past trauma, and that they're not doing it well enough because they still have anxiety or they still have depression. And it's important to understand that anxiety and depression are physiologically created, I think, far more than in many cases. So it's important to understand that when it comes to moving through the cancer journey, there's a high level of toxicity from both the cancer itself and from any kind of treatment. If there's surgeries, there's pain, there's medications, there's chemo that comes in, there's all these things that can create tremendous toxicity in the body. And the toxicity has the nature of inflammation. And inflammation has the nature of agitation. And so therefore, we should not be too hard on ourselves about anxiety. or depressive states when we are not feeling well because of something like cancer and cancer treatment. It's going to arise very naturally, and it's going to be part of the inflammatory processes happening physiologically. So therefore, we can't expect meditation to do a lot in terms of relaxing the mind unless we are combining it with other kinds of integrated therapies that produce physiological relaxation. And so meditation, in this sense, works really well with herbal medicine. And so if you have a home pharmacy of relaxing, anti-inflammatory, nerve calmative kind of herbs, and you use those with meditation, then anxiety calms down. So managing anxiety is a big part of that. Another is managing the pain. And ultimately, what this is really about, and very specifically your question, what is this listening to the heart practice? What does this have to do with cancer? Well, this will produce relaxation, especially if you are practicing while using herbs also. But it will also begin to give you some perspective about life. And it will begin to show you how the cycles of life and death and rebirth are all happening in every moment. You see, the broader cycle of birth, aging, death, and rebirth that I described in that Taoist system of transformations, that larger cycle is one lifetime. Okay. But within that one lifetime, there are all these other cycles. There is the biorhythm of the waking, dreaming, and sleeping. And then there is the biorhythm of breathing and the biorhythm of the heartbeat. And so what we see then is that we are actually part of these natural cycles that go from micro moments all the way to creation and dissolving of universes. It's all how nature operates. So what I have pointed to in these practices is a way that we can perceive how our life is natural. And that includes disease. And this is a contradiction because we would all like to have health, but as part of having a body, it includes the seeds of time. Time is passing. And as time passes, the seeds of aging ripen. And the seeds of aging are physiological functions go down, metabolic functions go down, detoxification functions go down, nourishment functions go down. This is natural, and this is part of this cycle of transformation. Blood becomes birth, birth becomes growth, growth becomes decay, decay becomes death. Now, at an ultimate level, what this means is that this phase of life or a serious disease is the opportunity for spiritual practice. And that also transforms suffering into meaning. And it is well established now in modern psychological research and studies and practice that people who transform illness into spiritual meaning have better results curing it and have better results managing it and have better results overall, even if they don't cure it. In other words, if we understand the role of disease in our life and we understand what I have heard so many times, that cancer has been my greatest teacher and so forth, it's a way of it's an example of what I said at the very beginning when we were listening to the micro moments of the heartbeat. I said, this is a practice of impermanence, studying impermanence. And studying impermanence is the foundation of spiritual practice. And spiritual practice is the basis of spiritual accomplishment. And spiritual accomplishment very much is related to being at peace about nature and being at peace about letting go of the body. And we generally, because of our human tendencies, we generally do not get focused on spiritual practice until we really have certainty that life is impermanent and that life is suffering. And so we have the opportunity many times to practice before illness. But for a lot of people, and I think this is historically correct, a lot of people don't actually start until there's a reminder that, oh, there's something to be done here spiritually because time is running out. Now, time is very short for everybody. That's just the way it is. If we look at this lifespan from the first heartbeat to the last, like the Taoist alchemist said, even if that's 1,000 years long, it passes like an instant. Okay, so all of our lives are very, very short. Time passes very quickly and it accelerates as we get older. And now collectively, we also have all of these warning signs coming about collective impermanence as well. And so what I would say then is, how do I see this relating to cancer? It's directly related on all these levels: stress reduction, reducing pain, and spiritual insight and meaning. And especially when you combine it with other therapies, this can become a very active, very dynamic spiritual process. And it can make the body more comfortable also. Okay, so thank you for asking. And I hope that everything progresses positively with lots of healing on many levels. Okay, so another one, I've been dealing with health issues, so this was very difficult for me. Now, that's an important point. Thank you for raising it. It is difficult to meditate when we have health issues. It's difficult for us to concentrate. It's difficult to sit still. We feel very uncomfortable. Meditation is not always the right thing. Sometimes we need other kinds of entryways. Sometimes instead of doing a deep, concentrated, focused practice like we were doing is not the right thing. Sometimes listening to deep esoteric philosophy is not the right thing. Sometimes what is better is something like yoga nidra. You listen to a relaxation tape and you do that after you have had a nice warm oil massage. Okay, so we do not have to be hard on ourselves that we don't meditate or that we don't meditate well, because it's very difficult for everybody to meditate in this day and age. And it's because there is so much inflammation in people's bodies and minds are so disturbed collectively, and we have so much distraction. So we should not be hard on ourselves about meditating or not being able to meditate well, but we should find the entry point. And the entry point for a lot of people is not meditation, it's actually relaxation. And therefore, I suggest cultivate relaxation practices first. And with that, you can also integrate relaxing herbs very nicely. So if you have a practice of integrating relaxing herbs and relaxation practices such as yoga nidra, or relaxing therapy such as a warm oil massage or the Shirodhara, the warm oil cascade over the head, you will begin to enter into deeper states of relaxation. And when you are in deeper states of relaxation, then meditation becomes more natural and easy to enter into. But on the other hand, if you are really tense or you are really physically uncomfortable, meditation can actually make that worse because you're trying to focus, and that can make you very tense. Meditation can aggravate people's tension. And so I frequently suggest start at the other side of things and relax your way into meditation. All right, good point, and thank you for that. And I hope that your health issues resolve quickly. So let's see, I'm going back up here. Okay, so here's another comment. I think we're almost done here. My take today is all fears get dissolved practicing meditation. Does this thought seem right to you? And I would say yes and no. All fears get dissolved in deep meditation. Okay. But until we enter into deeper states of meditation, meditation can make our fears worse. And this is frequently what happens in a meditation retreat. Some people may have done like a classical 10-day Vipassana retreat, and you know that there are some times, especially earlier on in the first few days, where you're sitting on the cushion and you're just having massive panic attacks. Why? Well, because you're not accustomed to this. You're not accustomed to no distractions. No distractions aggravates people's anxiety, you see, because people self-medicate with distractions. And people self-medicate with all kinds of other activities. And then if they say, well, I've got to get spiritual and meditate, they go to a retreat. It can be psychologically very disorienting. It can be emotionally too stressful to actually just take the nervous system out of the daily routines and put the nervous system on a meditation cushion and tell it to be quiet. It makes things terrible to do that. But what is happening, if you've got the fortitude for it, what's happening is you're actually coming face to face with the reality of how your nervous system is tense. And it will gradually unwind on its own. But it takes time. And usually people don't actually start to feel relaxed enough to enter into meditative states until about day 5 or 6 or 10. Okay, so that's why longer meditation retreats are really required to go deeper into meditation. We cannot meditate in the current conditions of a typical active day nowadays. It's not neurologically possible. So when we look at your question that way, all fears get dissolved practicing meditation. It is true, but we have to go deep enough into the meditation that our nervous system is very deeply relaxed and we are in a state of light samadhi or deep samadhi, which means that the mind is very quiet and peaceful and still. And in that state, fears can arise. We can observe that mental states of anxiety and emotional states of anxiety arise, but we are noticing them from a place of detachment and equanimity and clarity. It's like the metaphor of the clouds passing through the sky. We notice that the emotions of fear or depression or sadness or grief are passing, but they don't consume us. And that's because our meditative state is more spacious and like the sky. And then we can kind of detach and get a little space from the movement of the thoughts. So even in deeper states of meditation, those thoughts and emotions and body sensations still arise, but we observe them with equanimity and they dissolve. And so one of the quotes that I have given frequently came from Amachi, who you probably have heard of, the hugging saint. And she was once asked by a reporter, "Do you get angry at the world?" And she said, "Sometimes anger arises. It is seen as worthless and it dissolves." All right, now that's the perspective of a transcendent mind. That is a person who no longer identifies their emotions with an ego. She didn't say, "I get angry." She said, "Sometimes anger arises." Okay, well, that indicates that she's looking at the passing of emotions on a continual state of deep wisdom. And then she is noticing that they have no value, that, that is a high level of wisdom to observe the nature of the emotions and then to just dissolve, that they evaporate on their own. And so this is the basis of many practices where we observe the coming and going of thoughts and the nature of thoughts, and they all subside on their own. And therefore, the answer is that in the beginning stages of meditation, those thoughts can become worse and heightened. But a little more practice, and we start to get more spaciousness, and we notice that they are coming and going. And then even deeper levels of samadhi, and all of that coming and going becomes very calm and quiet. So the answer is it's dependent on the state of the meditation. Good point, and thank you for asking. All right, I'm going to do a quick scan here, but I think that's everything. So many. Okay, one last thing here for those of you who are still here. Thank you for those of you who are staying on. I am new to this practice and find the pulse point gets tender. Will the tenderness subside with practice? Well, try, don't push on it hard, okay? Just listen very lightly. And you can listen to other places also. You can feel it here or you can feel it here. This is class number one in the system actually is learning how to feel the pulse point. Okay, just do it very lightly. Okay, I can access, here's the last one, I think. I can access the knowing how the heartbeat dissipates the fear of death. Not so much how it dissipates the fear of living. Could you please speak to that? Okay, very good. Uh, so, how is it that we may have no fear of death, but still fear being alive or fear the conditions of life? Well, I think this is actually fairly normal because when people find themselves in really truly horrible uh, conditions, they long for death. All right, that's a normal human thing, and it's always been like that. Uh, when a person is in excruciating pain because of a disease or an injury, they want relief. And if there is no relief, then that means they want out. They want out of this body. They want the peace of death. Okay. And so overcoming the fear of death may be easier actually than overcoming the fear of life. Now, the relationship um, between the two is not so simple or direct. And in these practices, I framed everything as having to do with cultivating certainties. Okay. And cultivating certainties in each of the examples of the practices that we did, I pointed out that if we have great certainty, like in the first practice, if we have great certainty that life begins with a pulse and ends with a pulse, it begins with the heart contracting and it ends with the pause after the pulse. Okay. That was the first practice. The pulse wave arises and then it subsides. And in that, we see the entire cycle of life, that the heart is contracting and then it relaxes. Now, if we meditate on that, we will develop the awareness that we are actually only one heartbeat away from the next life. We are only one heartbeat away from the end of this life because the heart has to pulse again for life to start. And therefore, this becomes a practice in observing how life starts and ends and starts and ends and starts and ends. Now, a lot of the realizations or the certainties are things that come from knowing ourself. And they come from knowing ourself at a deeper level of knowing how we are part of nature. Okay. Now, the fear of living, well, how does that manifest for each person? The fear of living, that's something that I would start with if I was talking to someone, in a personal spiritual consultation about meditation training. What exactly is the fear of life? And I would say, does it give you any strength to be aware that the heartbeat is actually the manifestation of God, of an absolute cosmological intelligence that evolved the biosphere of the earth, and that the heartbeat is the intelligence of the biosphere of the earth? Does it give you any strength mentally, emotionally, spiritually to feel connected to an absolute source spiritually? I think that's probably the key to that answer and to that question is, I would say, why is there fear of life? Well, obviously, when there's trauma, then we have memory and our association with life is fearful. Now, that is another answer. And what I can say is that listening to the heartbeat is very profoundly healing because we are giving attention to our own heart. And our attention is energy. And our attention is presence. And being present with ourself is giving energy to ourself. And this presence is actually what heals us. Because in order to have, in order to give love to someone, you have to be present with them. And in order to give love with ourselves, we have to be present with ourselves. And so the beginning of healing trauma in this system, how we can use these meditations for healing trauma and to healing the fear of life, is to strengthen ourselves by giving ourselves the self-love of our own presence with our own heartbeat. And many times for people, this is a revelation. Their heart has never actually felt like we were paying attention to it. So this is very, very strengthening to the spiritual heart. If we listen to the heartbeat, we are sending prana of attention to the heart. And if we listen to the heartbeat, it doesn't even matter what practice we do. We just listen to it and listen to it and listen to it. Then the prana begins to infuse the heart. And by infusing the prana of attention into the heart, the luminosity of the chi of the heart begins to grow. And that is the Shen. The spirit is becoming more luminous. The spirit is becoming brighter. And so we send healing energy to the heart. The spirit of the heart becomes brighter. And then we can dissolve the past more easily. Like Amachi said, fear arises. We see that it has no purpose and then it dissolves. Okay. Now that's true for habitual fear of past memories. Sometimes we need fear. But in this case, if we have a fear of life, my answer would be, what is causing the fear of life? And if we listen to our heart, we strengthen our spirit so that it gives us more courage. That's a simple answer to a very deep and profound and complex question that you have raised. And thank you for asking that and joining us from Germany. All right. I
David, there's a recurring question from a couple of people,
mhm.
and I think it's the last question. If you see a correlation between listening to the heart and heart math.
Well, Heart Math is an institute, and they have a system of uh, integrating attention in the heart. There's a lot of similarities, but the difference is that the listening to the heart system is based on classical Asian medicine, and it incorporates Ayurvedic teachings and Vedic teachings and Tantric teachings. So it's actually an integration of medicine and science and classical Asian medicine and some of the Taoist and the Vedic teachings that are very spiritual. So that's the answer to that. And let me go back again. Um, okay, so good. I'm glad that the explanation for meditation was helpful. Um, Thank you for feeling relaxed and rejuvenated. Thank you. All right. I think that's everything then. And uh, okay, I see. All right. So that answers that on the heart math. I think that's everything. And so I will just say thank you to all of you for attending. And Karen, Wendy, thank you both for making this happen. We all know how much work goes into this. And so much gratitude to both of you. Much gratitude to all of you, and especially to all of you in the Sangha who have gone this entire journey from the first course all the way through all of these sessions. And for those of you who might be joining that archive of the Sangha recordings, thank you for that also. Okay, I am sure there will be something else in the future, and so I will see you somewhere down the road. And in the meantime, the best advice I can give anybody is continue to listen to the heart.